3 women had confessed their love to Kang Haejin that month alone. The first was a pharmaceutical rep who had slipped a handwritten letter into his coat pocket during a hospital fundraiser. He found it that night, read it with the same detached interest he'd give a medical journal abstract, and recycled it. The second was a senior nurse from the pediatric ward who had waited outside his office for 2 hours, trembling, rehearsing her speech. He listened. He waited until she finished. Then he said, in a voice so gentle it almost made the rejection worse, "I'm sorry. I don't feel that way." She cried in the break room for the rest of her shift. The third was Dr. Kwon Nara. She had cornered him in the stairwell between the 6th and 7th floors on a Wednesday evening, her eyes already wet, her hands clasped together like she was praying. "I've been in love with you for 2 years, Nara whispered. I know you don't see me. I know you don't see anyone. But I needed you to hear it. Just once." Haejin looked at her. He studied her face the way he studied everything, carefully, clinically. She was beautiful. He could acknowledge that the way he could acknowledge that a painting was well composed. Technically. Objectively. Without feeling a single thing. "Nara," he said. "You deserve someone who can give you what you're asking for." "I can't. I'm sorry." She wiped her eyes, nodded, and walked down the stairs. He stood in that stairwell for a full minute afterward and waited for something, anything, to move inside his chest. Guilt. Sympathy. Regret. Attraction. Anything at all. Nothing came. It never came. In 31 years of life, Kang Haejin had never felt a single romantic emotion toward any woman. He had been born into a body that could perform miracles on an operating table and an empire that could move mountains. But whatever part of the human brain was supposed to light up when you looked at someone and thought mine, that part of him had never once flickered. He had accepted it about himself the way you accept a birthmark. It was simply who he was. So when, exactly 6 days after Nara's stairwell confession, Kang Haejin walked up to a woman at the 4th floor nurse's station, opened his mouth, and voluntarily spoke to her, not as a colleague addressing a subordinate, but as a man approaching a woman because something inside him physically could not stay away, every single person who witnessed it understood, on some primal level, that the earth had just shifted on its axis. They just didn't know how much until she looked at him and said no. Now, before we go any further, if you love stories that grab your heart in the first minute and don't let go until the very last word, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that bell. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever met someone who made you feel something you'd never felt before? Because that's what this story is about. And I promise you, it's going to wreck you in the best way possible. Let's go. It had started 6 days earlier. A Tuesday. 11:14 in the morning. Haejin was walking through the 3rd floor surgical corridor when something made him stop outside operating room 4. He had walked past operating rooms 10,000 times in his career without pausing. But that morning, something hooked him, an instinct, a gravity, a pull he had no name for. He turned his head. He looked through the observation window. And his life split into before and after. A woman was standing over an open chest cavity. She had a man's heart cradled in her hands, literally held between her fingers, and she was commanding the room with a voice that could have cut diamond. "Retract here. Not there, here. Do you see this vessel? This is the LAD artery. If your hand drifts 2 millimeters, he codes. So plant your feet and focus, or get out of my operating room." The trembling resident across from her obeyed instantly. The assisting surgeon stepped aside. She didn't ask for space. She claimed it. Her hands moved with a speed and precision that Haejin recognized because it matched his own, that rare, almost inhuman steadiness that separated great surgeons from legendary ones. A complication hit. Sudden bleed. The kind that made experienced surgeons freeze for a critical half-second. She didn't freeze. She adapted. She rerouted. She solved the problem with 3 movements so efficient they looked choreographed. Haejin's hand came up and pressed flat against the glass. His heart was racing. He could feel it, actually feel it, slamming against his ribs in a way it never had outside of physical exertion. His skin felt electric. His breathing was wrong. Something in his chest was cracking open, something ancient and frozen and so deeply buried he had forgotten it existed. He stood at that window for 7 minutes. When she pulled down her mask, revealing deep brown skin that glowed under the surgical lights and a face so striking it should have been illegal, the crack widened into a fissure. When she smiled at her team and said, "He's going to make it," the fissure became a chasm. Nurse Jeon found him standing there, late for a department meeting, palm against glass, looking like a man who'd been struck by lightning. "Dr. Kong? Your meeting started 5 minutes, who is she?" Jeon blinked. In 2 years, he had never asked about anyone. Dr. Alara Sinclair. New cardiothoracic fellow. Transferred from Johns Hopkins. Haejin said nothing. He peeled his hand off the glass, looked at it as if it had betrayed him, and walked away. He sat through his entire meeting without hearing a word. That night, alone in his penthouse overlooking the Han River, he pressed his palm against his own chest and felt his heart still hammering. 12 hours later. Still hammering. He, who had spent his career repairing hearts, who understood every valve and vessel and electrical pathway, could not explain what was happening to his own. But he knew one thing. For the first time in 31 years, something had woken up inside him. And it had the shape of a woman he'd never spoken to. 6 days he watched from a distance. He observed her the way he observed rare pathologies, with fascination, with focus, with a hunger to understand. He watched her sit at patients' bedsides and hold their hands while explaining procedures in language so warm that fear visibly drained from their faces. He watched her argue with a senior attending about a treatment protocol, refusing to back down, standing her ground with quiet, immovable conviction. He watched her eat lunch alone every day, reading journals with one hand and stirring soup with the other, and the loneliness radiating off her matched something inside him so precisely it made his chest physically hurt. On the 6th day, he couldn't take it anymore. He walked up to the nurse's station. "Dr. Sinclair." She didn't look up from her chart. "I have an aortic dissection repair tomorrow. Complex. Multi-layered. I'd like us to lead it together. Jointly." He never shared cases. He never co-led. This was the most generous professional offer anyone in this hospital had ever heard him make. It was also, though no one knew it, the first time in 31 years that Kang Haejin had voluntarily approached a woman. The hallway went quiet. 13 people within earshot. 3 seconds of silence. Then she raised her head. Deep brown eyes met his. And in them, he saw the thing he was most afraid of. Nothing. No spark. No recognition. No hint that the earthquake inside his chest had any echo in hers. "No," she said. "I lead my own cases, Dr. Kong. I don't need to stand beside someone else to prove I deserve to be here." She looked back down. Dismissed him. Like he was a door-to-door salesman she'd already decided not to buy from. Behind him, Jeon gasped. Nara, watching from the water cooler, went pale. 2 residents froze mid-conversation. The hallway hummed with shock. But nobody, not a single person watching, knew the truth. They thought a woman had rejected a powerful surgeon. What had actually happened was that a man who had spent 31 years feeling nothing had reached for the one person who made him feel everything, and she had handed his heart back to him without unwrapping it. Alara turned and walked away. White coat flowing. Natural coils bouncing in a high puff. She didn't look back. And Haejin stood there, perfectly still, his face revealing nothing, while something inside him did the opposite of what it should have done. It should have retreated. It should have shut down. Instead, it caught fire. The wanting didn't shrink. It doubled. It became enormous, ungovernable, alive. He watched the empty space where she'd stood and thought, with the stunned clarity of a man who had just discovered gravity, "I have never wanted anything in my life. Now I want her. And she doesn't want me." And I have absolutely no idea what to do with that. While the hospital erupted with gossip, Alara Sinclair sat alone in her office, closed the door, and called the only person in the world she trusted. Nana Vi. Her grandmother's voice came through the phone warm as fresh bread. Baby girl. You sound tired. Are you eating? I'm eating. Real food or hospital food? There's a difference in Korea. Don't get smart with me, Alara and Sinclair. Alara laughed, and the sound released something tight in her chest. 6,000 miles away, in a small flat in Brixton that always smelled like ginger and cinnamon, her grandmother was probably sitting in her favorite armchair with a cup of tea, and just knowing that made Seoul feel less foreign. Some surgeon asked me to work with him today, Alara said carefully. I said no. Why? Because he's the kind of man who's used to everyone saying yes. And I didn't come halfway around the world to be someone's accessory. Silence. Then, was he handsome? Nana. I'm old, not dead. Was he? Alara bit her lip. Kang Haejin was not handsome. Handsome was a word for men in magazine advertisements. Haejin was something else entirely, sharp-jawed, dark-eyed, tall enough that she'd had to tilt her head to meet his gaze, with a presence so intense it had taken actual effort not to react to it. It doesn't matter, Alara said. I'm here to work. Nana Vi hummed, in that tone that meant she saw straight through every wall Alara had ever built. Just remember, baby. Not every man who reaches for you is trying to grab you. Some of them are just trying to touch something real. After they hung up, Alara sat in the silence of her office and pressed her fingers to her temples. Nana Vi didn't know about Marcus. Alara had never told her the full truth about her ex-fiancé, the charming, successful London surgeon who had swept her off her feet at 25 and spent 2 years slowly, methodically convincing her that she was too ambitious, too independent, too much. He had never hit her. He hadn't needed to. He had used words the way other men used fists, precisely, strategically, always in private, always followed by an apology so convincing she'd question her own memory. By the time she left him, she didn't recognize herself. It took a year of therapy, a transfer to Johns Hopkins, and an ocean between them before she rebuilt the woman she was supposed to be. She built her back stronger. She built her back armored. And the armor had one simple rule at its core: never let a powerful man close enough to make you small. So no. It didn't matter that Kang Haejin was handsome. It didn't matter that his voice had done something strange to her pulse when he'd said her name. She was here for the medicine. Everything else was noise. The problem with noise, Alara discovered over the next 2 weeks, was that Kang Haejin was very, very bad at being quiet. He didn't pursue her the way she expected, no grand gestures, no aggressive persistence, no entitled demands for her attention. He just appeared. Wherever she was, he materialized nearby like a very well-dressed ghost who happened to have the same schedule. The surgical library at 7 in the morning. The cafeteria at noon. The corridor between radiology and the cardiac wing at 3:15. Always nearby. Never intrusive. Never staring. Just present. Reading his own journals. Eating his own food. Existing in her space as if the entire hospital were a planet and she were its sun and he had simply settled into orbit. On the 4th morning in the library, she cracked. Are you stalking me? She asked without looking up from her journal. I've been using this library for 6 years, he said, turning a page. You arrived 11 days ago. Statistically, you're stalking me. She looked up. He was reading an article on emergency thoracotomies with what appeared to be genuine interest. He hadn't looked at her once. You're sitting 3 tables away from where you sat last week, she said. You've moved closer every day. He paused. The faintest hint of surprise crossed his face, as though he hadn't realized he'd been doing it. Then, the lighting is better over here. The lighting is fluorescent. It's the same everywhere. Then maybe the company is better. She stared at him. He stared back. And for exactly 2 seconds, something crackled between them, brief, electric, undeniable. Then she shook her head, almost smiled, and went back to her journal. "You're unbelievable. I've been told." The next morning, there was a coffee on the table across from hers. Black, no sugar. She hadn't told him how she took it. She sat down, took a sip, and said nothing. He sat across from her, opened his journal, and said nothing. But the distance between them had just halved, and they both knew it. The banter became their language. Sharp, quick, laced with something neither would acknowledge. When she mentioned a rare cardiac anomaly during a department meeting that nobody else recognized, a published case study appeared on her desk the next day with a sticky note: "You were right. Everyone else was wrong." As usual. She kept the note. She told herself it was because the case study was relevant. In the cafeteria, their lunches became a daily negotiation. "You're at my table again," she said one afternoon. "Our table," he corrected, sitting down with his tray. "I didn't agree to share. And yet you saved me a seat." She looked down. She had, unconsciously, placed her bag on the floor instead of the chair across from her. She always used to put it on the chair. "That doesn't mean anything." "Of course not." He bit into his kimbap and she caught, just barely, the ghost of a smile. The first real smile she'd ever seen on his face. It changed everything. It transformed him from intimidating to devastating, and she looked away so fast she knocked over her water. He caught the cup before it spilled. His hand moved with that surgical speed, effortless, instinctive, almost inhuman. His fingers brushed hers on the cup. The contact lasted half a second. Her entire arm went warm. "Careful," he said. Their eyes met. His hand was still touching hers on the cup. Neither moved. 3 seconds. 4. 5. Then she pulled her hand back, grabbed her tray, and stood up. "I have rounds." She walked away too quickly, and Hagen watched her go with his heart doing something it had never done before, aching. Not from pain. From want. From the sensation of touching her skin for half a second and having it not be enough. He looked down at his hand as if it belonged to someone else. Shin Junwoo, his underboss, who had been waiting across the cafeteria in plain clothes, walked over and sat down. "You're staring at your own hand." "Go away, Junwoo. You've got it bad." "I said go away." Junwoo grinned, the kind of grin that said he'd been waiting years to see the unshakable Kang Hagen shaken. "Your mother would have loved this." Hagen's expression softened. His mother, Yoonji, who had died when he was 12. The only person who'd ever made his father human. He wondered, briefly, if she could see him now. If she'd be laughing. He thought she probably would be. 3 weeks after Alara's arrival, a multi-vehicle collision flooded the emergency department with casualties. Hagen was already gowned and operating when the worst case rolled in, a 35-year-old woman, chest crushed by the steering column, cardiac tamponade, multiple organ trauma. The trauma was Hagen's domain. The cardiac crisis was not. "Page Dr. Sinclair," he said. Every head in the room turned. After everything, the rejection, the gossip, the library standoffs, he was calling her. "Now," he added, in the voice that moved empires. She arrived in 4 minutes. Already gloved. Already reading monitors. She didn't greet him. She didn't hesitate. She went straight to work. They operated side by side for over an hour. She managed the heart. He managed everything else. They communicated in clipped, precise exchanges, tamponade resolving. Hemorrhage controlled. Watch the left ventricle. But beneath the clinical language, something extraordinary was happening. Their rhythm was seamless. They anticipated each other's movements as though they'd operated together for years, not minutes. When she needed more space, he shifted before she asked. When he needed a cardiac assessment, she provided it before he finished the question. The surgical team watched in stunned silence. They had never seen Heijin work in sync with anyone. He was always the soloist, the lone maestro. But with her, he was something else. He was half of a duet. The patient survived. In the scrub room afterward, they stood side by side at the sinks. Water running. Steam rising. The adrenaline still humming in both of them. You anticipated my next move 3 times in there, she said, scrubbing her forearms. You anticipated mine 4 times. But who's counting? She almost laughed. Caught it. Pressed her lips together. We work well together. We do. That doesn't mean, I know what it doesn't mean. She turned off her faucet. Reached for a towel. Turned to face him. He was already looking at her. Up close, under the harsh scrub room light, the details of his face were almost unfair. The sharp jaw. The dark eyes. The way his wet hair fell across his forehead, making him look younger, less guarded, more human. She was close enough to see the scar on his collarbone where it disappeared beneath his scrub top. She wanted to ask about it. She didn't. Thank you, she said quietly. For calling me in. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. You were the best person for that case. Ego doesn't belong in an operating room. Something shifted in her expression. Something warm and unguarded that appeared for just a moment before she caught it and pulled it back behind her walls. But he saw it. And it made his heart slam so hard he was certain she could hear it. She stepped toward the door. He said her name. Elara. She stopped. Turned. They were 5 feet apart. The scrub room was small and warm and filled with steam, and the air between them was thick enough to touch. He took a step toward her. She didn't step back. Another step. Close enough now that she could feel his warmth. Close enough that she could smell the clean soap on his skin. His eyes dropped to her lips. Briefly. Involuntarily. She saw it. Her breath caught. He leaned in, slowly, carefully, giving her every chance to move. She didn't move. Her eyes started to close. His hand reached for her jaw, and the door burst open. A first-year resident stumbled in, saw them, turned the color of a tomato, and stammered, Sorry, Dr. Park wants the post-op notes. I'll come back. He fled. The moment shattered. Elara blinked, stepped back, and the walls went up so fast Heijin could almost hear them locking into place. That can't happen, she said. Elara, it can't. She walked out. In the scrub room, Heijin braced both hands on the sink, dropped his head, and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped inside him for 31 years. She had almost let him kiss her. Almost. The almost was going to kill him. 2 days later, a man named Dr. Cole Whitfield arrived at Seoul Central. Visiting cardiothoracic surgeon from Johns Hopkins. Tall, blonde, easy smile, American confidence that filled every room he entered. He was there for a 2-week teaching exchange. And the moment he walked onto the cardiac floor and saw Elara, his face split into a grin that told everyone watching a very specific story. Elara Sinclair. Still saving lives and breaking hearts. She looked up from her chart, and her face did something Heijin had never seen it do. It lit up. Cole? What are you? Oh my God. She hugged him. She actually hugged him. Arms around his neck, genuine warmth, the kind of easy physical affection that comes from real history. Heijin was 20 feet away, reviewing a patient file he suddenly couldn't read. He watched them laugh together. He watched Cole touch her shoulder, lean in to whisper something that made her throw her head back and laugh, a full, open, unguarded laugh that Heijin had never heard from her. He had made her almost smile. Almost laugh. Almost everything. This man got the full version just by walking through a door. Something ignited in Heijin's chest. It was hot, sharp, and vicious, and he didn't recognize it because he had never felt it before. He didn't know it was jealousy until Junwoo appeared beside him and said casually, Your hand is about to snap that pen in half. Heijin looked down. The pen in his grip was bent almost to breaking. He released it. Who is he? Heijin asked. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. Dr. Cole Whitfield. Hopkins. He and Dr. Sinclair were in the same program. Word is they were close. How close? Junwoo raised an eyebrow. Would you like me to find out? No. A beat. Yes. Junwoo walked away smiling. Heijin stared at the bent pen and thought, so this is jealousy. It's terrible. I hate it. Over the next 3 days, Cole became Heijin's personal torment. Cole sat in Alara's seat in the cafeteria. Cole made Alara laugh in the corridors. Cole brought her coffee, wrong, it was a latte and she drank hers black, which gave Heijin a savage, petty satisfaction he was not proud of. On the third evening, Heijin passed the residence lounge and saw them through the window, Alara and Cole, sitting close on a sofa, heads bent over a journal, his arms stretched along the back behind her shoulders. Heijin's feet stopped. His jaw locked. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Alara glanced up. Through the glass, their eyes met. She saw the look on his face, dark, intense, blazing with something that stopped her mid-sentence. For 3 full seconds, across that window, the air between them burned. Then Heijin turned and walked away. Fast. Alara stared after him. You okay? Cole asked. Fine, she said. She wasn't fine. The look on Heijin's face had reached through the glass and grabbed something inside her chest, and it hadn't let go. She found him in the stairwell 20 minutes later. The same stairwell where Nara had confessed. He was standing on the landing between 6 and 7, his back against the wall, his head tipped back, his eyes closed. She had never seen him look like this. Unraveled. Heijin. He opened his eyes. They were blazing. Are you with him? The question was raw. No preamble. No politeness. Just naked, desperate need to know. Cole? He's my friend. He's been my friend since residency. He doesn't look at you like a friend. That's his problem, not mine. Is it mine? She stared at him. You're jealous. He laughed, short, harsh, humorless. I have never been jealous of anything in my entire life. I didn't even know what it felt like until I watched him make you laugh in a way I've been trying to earn for 3 weeks. So yes. I'm jealous. I'm jealous and I'm furious and I'm standing in a stairwell at 10 o'clock at night because if I stay on that floor one more second I'm going to do something I'll regret, and I don't. He stopped. Closed his eyes again. Took a breath. When he opened them, the raw edge was still there, but controlled. Barely. I don't have practice at this, he said quietly. I've never wanted anything before. And wanting you is so, it's overwhelming. Every part of it. The wanting and the not having and the watching someone else stand where I want to stand. I don't know how to handle any of it. She climbed the stairs until she was on his landing. 2 feet away. Cole is not a threat to you, she said. Her voice was softer than she intended. No one is. Because I don't, she stopped herself. But they both heard what she almost said. Because I don't feel this way about anyone else. The stairwell was silent. The hospital hummed distantly around them. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. His fingers closed around hers, and the touch was so gentle it made her eyes sting. Tell me there's a chance, he whispered. Even if it's small. Even if it takes time. Tell me I'm not standing here alone. She squeezed his hand. You're not standing here alone. The words cost her everything. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, a gesture so tender, so old-fashioned, so completely at odds with everything she knew about powerful men that it cracked her armor in a place she couldn't reach to repair. And then his phone rang. He closed his eyes. Answered it. The conversation was in Korean, rapid, sharp, his voice shifting into that other register, the one that belonged to a different man. His jaw tightened. His grip on her hand changed, not tighter, but different. Protective. When he hung up, his face had transformed. The tenderness was gone. Something cold and operational had replaced it. I have to go. What's wrong? Business. He said the word like it tasted bitter. He released her hand and moved toward the stairs. Haejin. He stopped. What kind of business does a surgeon handle at 10 at night? He didn't answer. He didn't look back. He walked down the stairs and disappeared, and Alara stood alone on the landing with her heart in her throat and the sudden, chilling certainty that the man she was falling for was carrying something far darker than a surgical caseload. She found out 3 nights later. She was working a late shift, the hospital nearly empty, when a commotion at the emergency entrance made her step out of her office. 2 men in dark suits were half carrying a third man through the doors. The injured man was bleeding from a wound in his left side, a clean, precise wound that Alara recognized instantly. It was a knife wound. Possibly a stab. The men saw her white coat and moved toward her. Help him. Please. What happened? He was attacked. Please, just help him. She guided them to an empty trauma bay and began working. The wound was deep but manageable, it had missed the kidney by centimeters. As she cleaned and sutured, she noticed things. The injured man's hands were calloused in ways that had nothing to do with manual labor. He had a tattoo on his inner wrist, a symbol she didn't recognize but that looked deliberate, ritualistic. And the 2 men standing guard at the door weren't just concerned friends. They were soldiers. She finished the suture, applied dressings, and was writing discharge instructions when one of the men made a phone call. He spoke 1 sentence in Korean. Then he held the phone out to her. He wants to speak with you. She took the phone. Hello? Is he stable? Haejin's voice. Her blood went cold. He's fine. Knife wound, missed the kidney. 16 sutures. Haejin, who are these people? 3 seconds of silence. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Please wait for me. Who are these people? Alara. Please. She waited. He arrived in 9 minutes, still in his suit, a different suit from the one he wore at the hospital, darker, sharper, the kind of suit that cost more than her annual rent. He walked into the trauma bay with an authority that had nothing to do with medicine. The 2 men straightened when they saw him. Not the way hospital staff straightened when the head of surgery walked in. The way soldiers straightened when their commander arrived. He checked the injured man, spoke to the 2 guards in low Korean, then turned to Alara. His face was carefully blank. Thank you. For treating him. Who is he? Someone who works for me. Works for you doing what? Alara, there's a knife wound in that man's side, 2 armed guards at the door, and you showed up in a suit that costs more than my car at midnight. Don't tell me it's business. Tell me what's really going on. He looked at her for a long moment. And she watched him make a decision, the most dangerous decision of his life. He chose the truth. My family runs the Kong Syndicate. We are the most powerful criminal organization in South Korea. I am the sole heir. I have been living in both worlds since I was 23. The surgeon is real. But so is this. The trauma bay went dead silent. Alara felt the floor tilt beneath her. Criminal organization. Syndicate. Heir. The words crashed into her one by one like waves against a seawall. She looked at the injured man on the gurney. She looked at the guards. She looked at Haejin, at the suit, the posture, the cold authority that she now understood wasn't surgical confidence at all. It was power. Real, dark, blood-soaked power. You're a crime lord, she whispered. I'm a surgeon who inherited an empire I never asked for. I've been trying to, don't. Her voice cracked. Don't spin this. Don't make it sound noble. You run a criminal organization and you didn't tell me. I was going to, when? Before or after I fell in love with you? The confession slipped out like a blade. They both felt it. Her eyes went wide. His went raw. Elara, stay away from me. She pulled off her gloves, dropped them on the floor, and walked out. Now, if your heart is pounding right now, I need you to hit that like button immediately. Smash it. This story is about to break into 1,000,000 pieces, and I need you here for every single one. Subscribe if you haven't, drop a comment telling me what you'd do if you found out the person you were falling for had a secret like this, and let's keep going, because what happens next changed both of their lives forever. She didn't speak to him for 12 days. 12 days of silence so loud it screamed through every corridor of the hospital. She changed her schedule. She avoided every route that might intersect with his. She ate lunch in her office with the door locked. She worked, she operated, she functioned, and every night she went home to her empty apartment in Itaewon and sat in the dark and fought with herself. The rational part of her said run. Pack a bag. Go home to Nana Vi. This man is everything you swore you'd never let close, powerful, secretive, dangerous in ways you can't even measure. The other part, the part that remembered his hands shaking when he touched her face, the part that remembered him saying I have never wanted anything before, the part that still felt the ghost of his lips on her knuckles, that part said something she didn't want to hear. It said, he told you the truth when he could have lied. It said, he chose honesty even though it could cost him everything. It said, that's not what Marcus did. Marcus lied. Always. About everything. Haejin told you the worst thing about himself and stood there waiting for the blow. Those are not the same kind of man. She hated that the voice was right. Haejin was worse. He didn't eat. He barely slept. He operated with the same mechanical perfection, his hands didn't know how to fail, but the light behind his eyes went out. Junwoo noticed. Jiyeon noticed. Even the residents, who were generally oblivious to anything that wasn't on an exam, noticed that Dr. Kong looked like a man who had been hollowed out from the inside. He didn't try to contact her. He wanted to. Every cell in his body screamed at him to go to her, to explain, to beg, to do whatever it took. But she had said stay away, and he would respect that even if it destroyed him, because her boundaries were sacred to him in a way nothing else had ever been. On the 12th night, it rained. A typhoon-grade downpour that turned Seoul into a river and sent half the hospital staff home early. Elara was leaving through the east entrance when she saw him. He was standing outside the hospital doors. In the rain. No umbrella. Soaked through his coat. Just standing there, face tilted slightly upward, eyes closed, letting the storm hit him as if he were trying to feel something strong enough to drown out the ache. He didn't see her. She could have turned around. She could have taken another exit. She could have walked past him without a word. Instead, she walked into the rain. She stopped 3 feet from him. The downpour was deafening, soaking through her coat in seconds, plastering her hair to her face. How long have you been standing out here? She asked. He opened his eyes. The look on his face when he saw her, the raw, cracked, desperate hope, was the most human thing she had ever witnessed. I don't know, he said. I come here every night. Every night? You leave through this exit at 8:40. I come at 8:30. I need to know you're safe. I stand here until I see you walk to your car. Then I leave. 12 nights. He had been standing in front of this hospital for 12 nights, watching her walk to her car, making sure she was safe, never once letting her know. The rain pounded down between them. You should have told me, she said. About who you are. From the beginning. I know. I've been with a man who lied to me. Who kept secrets and used them as weapons. I swore I'd never, I'm not him. The words were sharp. Fierce. Almost angry. Not at her, at the man who had damaged her so badly that honesty now felt like a threat. I'm not him, Alara. I kept this from you because I was afraid. Because for the first time in my life I had something I could lose, and I was terrified that if you knew the truth, you'd. His voice broke. He stopped. Swallowed. Tried again. You do exactly what you did. She was crying. She couldn't feel the tears because of the rain, but she knew they were there. I don't know how to do this, she said. I don't know how to love someone who lives in the dark. Then teach me how to live in the light. He said it simply. Desperately. Like a man offering the only thing he had left. I'll dismantle it. All of it. I'll walk away from the syndicate. I'll burn it down if that's what it takes. But don't ask me to walk away from you. That's the one thing I can't survive. She closed the distance between them. 3 feet became 2. 2 became 1. 1 became nothing. She grabbed the front of his soaking coat and pressed her forehead against his chest, and his arms came around her so fast it was like he'd been holding them open for 12 days, waiting. The rain poured down on them, and he held her so tightly she could feel his heartbeat through both their coats, and it was thundering. Don't lie to me again, she whispered against his chest. Ever. Never, he breathed into her hair. Not ever. She lifted her face. He looked down at her, rain streaming down both their faces, her eyes fierce and wet and full of something that looked like surrender and defiance at the same time. He kissed her. Standing in a typhoon outside a hospital in Seoul, drenched to the bone, holding each other like the storm might tear them apart if they let go. This kiss was different from the almost kiss in the scrub room. This one was real. This one was a decision. This one said, I choose you, knowing exactly who you are. The weeks that followed were the most alive either of them had ever been. They navigated their new reality with the same precision they brought to surgery, carefully, deliberately, aware that one wrong move could be catastrophic. He told her everything. The syndicate. The ports. The politicians. The blood. She listened without flinching, and when he finished, she said, How do we get you out? Not if. How? He started restructuring immediately. Junwoo took operational command. Illegal revenue streams began converting to legitimate enterprises. It would take years. But he had started, and the reason he started had brown eyes and steady hands and a laugh that made his heart forget it had ever been silent. They kept the relationship hidden from the hospital, mostly. They operated together with a synergy that made the surgical staff whisper. Their patient outcomes were unprecedented. They bickered over protocols in meetings with a fire that everyone could see was foreplay, though neither would admit it. One evening, after a brutal 16-hour shift, Alara was standing at the window of his office watching the city lights when she felt him behind her. He didn't touch her. He just stood close, his chest inches from her back, his warmth wrapping around her like a second skin. Then his arms came around her waist from behind, and he pulled her gently back against his chest, and he rested his chin on top of her head, and he held her there in silence while Seoul glittered below them. She closed her eyes and leaned into him, and the feeling of being held by someone who wanted nothing from her except her presence was so foreign and so beautiful that tears slipped down her cheeks without permission. I can hear you crying, he murmured. Shut up. He laughed softly against her hair. Make me. She turned in his arms, grabbed his tie, and kissed him until neither of them could think straight. Against his lips, she whispered, Nobody has ever held me like that before. Like what? Like I'm enough. He pulled back just far enough to look at her. You're not enough, he said. She blinked. You're everything. There's a difference. She shoved his chest. He caught her hands. They were both laughing, and the sound of it, two people who had spent their whole lives carrying weight alone, laughing together in a dark office above a sleeping city, was the most beautiful sound in Seoul that night. But the darkness hadn't finished with them. The flowers appeared in Alara's locker 3 weeks into their relationship. Black dahlias. No card. Then a card, he can't protect you. Haejin's investigation identified Jang Hee-won within 48 hours, the son of a destroyed rival family, resurfaced with a vendetta. And the betrayal came from inside. Nara, poisoned by jealousy, had been feeding Hee-won information for weeks. Ilara's schedule. Her apartment address. Her parking habits. It was Nara who confessed, sobbing, in Ilara's office on a Tuesday night. "I trusted you," Ilara said, and her voice was the flattest, most devastated sound Nara had ever heard. "You were my only friend here." Nara was dealt with, resignation, exile from Seoul, the permanent weight of what she'd done. But Hee-won was still out there. And he wasn't interested in just sending flowers anymore. It happened on a Thursday night. Ilara was walking to her car in the east parking garage, her mind on a surgery scheduled for the morning, when a man stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. He was lean, sharp-featured, with a scar along his left temple and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dr. Sinclair. We haven't met." She stopped. Her keys were in her hand. Her car was 30 feet away. "But I feel like I know you," he continued, stepping closer. "I know you eat lunch at 12:15. I know you park in this spot every night. I know you moved into the prince's penthouse last week. I know the sound of your heels on this concrete. I've been listening to them for weeks." Fear hit her like ice water. Pure, primal, total. "What do you want?" "I want Kang Hae-jin to feel what my father felt. Helpless. Watching something he loves be taken from him." He reached into his jacket. Every muscle in Ilara's body coiled. But what he pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a photograph. Of her. Sleeping. Taken through her apartment window before she'd moved into the penthouse. "He can't protect you," Hee-won said softly. "Not from me." Not from, the sound of footsteps, fast, precise, military, echoed through the garage. Hee-won's smile vanished. He turned. Jun-woo emerged from the shadows with 4 men, moving in formation, cutting off every exit. And behind them, walking with a calm that was more terrifying than any display of rage, was Hae-jin. He looked at Hee-won the way a surgeon looks at a tumor, with cold, methodical intent to remove it. "You're standing too close to her," Hae-jin said. His voice was barely a whisper. Hee-won smirked. "The prince arrives." I was beginning to think, step back. 2 words. No volume. No theatrics. Just absolute, annihilating authority. Hee-won read the room. 4 men behind him. Jun-woo to his left. Hae-jin in front of him with eyes that promised violence so precise it would be surgical. He stepped back. Hae-jin walked past him without breaking eye contact, positioned himself between Hee-won and Ilara, and said to Jun-woo, "Get him out of my city." Jun-woo's team moved. Hee-won was restrained, searched, and escorted to a black vehicle so quickly it was almost choreographed. As they pushed him into the car, Hee-won shouted over his shoulder, "This isn't over, Kang." Hae-jin didn't flinch. Didn't turn. He waited until the sound of the car faded into silence. Then he turned to Ilara. And the prince vanished. What remained was just a man, terrified, shaking, reaching for the woman he loved. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Did he touch you?" "No." "Hae-jin, He pulled her against him so hard the air left her lungs. He was shaking. His whole body was trembling, and he was holding her like she was the only solid thing in a world that had just tried to dissolve. "I can't," his voice cracked. "If anything had, I can't, I'm here," she whispered. "I'm right here." She held him in that cold, ugly parking garage, this man who commanded empires, and she felt his tears hot against her neck, and she understood something with perfect clarity: he would die for her. He would kill for her. He would burn down everything his family built to keep her safe. And she would spend the rest of her life making sure he never had to. Hee-won was dismantled within 72 hours. Network gutted. Finances seized. Identity erased. A one-way cargo ship with a warning that left no room for interpretation. The threat ended. But what it left behind, the certainty that they were bound together by something stronger than danger, that stayed forever. Dr. Park called them into his office 2 weeks later for a lecture on professionalism that lasted 45 excruciating minutes. Hagen let him finish, then said, "Our combined patient outcome rate has improved by 23% since Dr. Sinclair and I began collaborating. Would you prefer to discuss hospital optics or patient survival?" Dr. Park blinked. Cleared his throat. "You may go." In the elevator, Alara dissolved into laughter. 23%? I rounded up slightly. Slightly? Perhaps significantly. She shoved his shoulder. He caught her wrist, gently, his thumb settling over her pulse point, feeling her heartbeat against his fingertip. The laughter faded. He lifted her wrist to his lips and pressed a kiss to the inside, right over the pulse. "Your heart is fast," he murmured. "Stop doing that and it'll slow down." "No." She rolled her eyes, but her cheeks were warm, and when the elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor, she didn't pull her wrist away for another 2 seconds. His uncle, Kang Tae-jun, came 3 months later with an ultimatum. End the relationship or step down as heir. Hagen's response was delivered in the family estate study, surrounded by generations of Kang legacy. "If you say her name again, I'll forget we share blood." "You'd choose a woman over your family?" "I'd choose her over everything that exists." "Your father, my father is dead. I'm alive. And for the first time in my life, I know why." Tae-jun left. The war simmered. But Hagen had already chosen his side. The restructuring accelerated. The empire that had been built in shadow began, slowly, turning toward light. "I want to build a clinic," Hagen told Alara one night. They were lying in his bed, city lights painting the ceiling, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing slow patterns on her arm. "A free trauma and cardiac center. No insurance barriers. No bureaucracy. Just medicine." "Where?" "Gangnam. A free clinic in Gangnam. You want to put a charity hospital in the most expensive district in Seoul. I want to put it where it can't be ignored." She lifted her head and studied his face. The jaw. The eyes. The bullet scar on his collarbone. This man, born into blood, choosing healing. "I'll run the cardiac wing," she said. He looked at her like she'd just handed him the world. "On one condition," she added. "Name it." "We name it after your mother." He didn't speak. His arm tightened around her. She felt his breathing change, felt the tremor in his chest, and then felt the warmth of tears against the top of her head. Kang Hagen, who had spent 31 years without a single emotion, was crying for the second time in his life. Both times because of her. She held him and said nothing. Some moments don't need words. They just need someone brave enough to stay. 6 months later, the Kang Yunji Memorial Trauma and Cardiac Center broke ground. At the press conference, Hagen stood at the podium in a black suit and spoke about legacy and compassion and the woman who taught him that strength wasn't about control but about choosing tenderness when the world expected iron. Mid-sentence, his eyes found Alara in the front row, emerald dress, glowing skin, eyes bright with tears, and he stopped speaking. The room went quiet. Every camera caught it. The most powerful man in the room, silenced by the sight of one woman. The clip went viral by midnight. That night, after the gala, he took her hand and led her to the rooftop of the venue. Seoul lay beneath them, alive and sparkling, 10 million stories glittering in the dark. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small black box. "I wrote a speech," he said. Jun-woo helped. It was genuinely terrible. She laughed, and the sound echoed off the rooftop like music. "Then don't give one." He opened the box. A deep red garnet set in black gold. Bold, unusual, unconventional. Her. "I can't promise easy," he said. "But I promise real. I promise to choose you every single day, especially the days when everything is falling apart." I promise to be the man you saw in me before I even knew he existed. He dropped to one knee. Elara Sinclair. You are the only thing I've ever felt. Will you marry me? She pulled him up by his collar, crashed her lips against his so hard they stumbled backward against the railing, and whispered, through tears and laughter, I've been waiting since the scrub room. The ring fit perfectly. How did you know my size? He smirked. I'm a surgeon. I pay very close attention to hands. She laughed, deep, full, the kind of laugh that comes from the place where joy lives when it's no longer afraid to come out, and he lifted her and spun her on that rooftop while Seoul erupted beneath them like the entire city had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment, and could finally, exhale. If you made it to the end of this story, I already know something about you. You believe in love that's worth fighting for. So do me a favor. Drop a comment right now and tell me your favorite moment. The stairwell confession? The rain scene? The parking garage? The proposal? I want to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I need you to fix that immediately because stories like this are what we do here. Every single week. Hit subscribe. Hit the bell. Share this with someone who needs to believe that the most powerful force in the world isn't money or status or fear. It's a man who never felt anything, standing in the rain outside a hospital, waiting for the woman who made his heart beat for the very first time. Not to chase her. Not to convince her. Just to make sure she got to her car safely. Even though she told him to stay away. Even though it was killing him. That's not just love. That's devotion. And it started the day she looked at him and said the one word nobody else ever had. No. Sometimes, the greatest love stories begin with rejection. And the right person doesn't break down your walls. They stand on the other side, soaking wet, heart wide open, and wait. Until the day you open the door yourself.